Hello everyone, here is the California Rainmaker we've kind of been waiting on here in the month of December. You have an upper level low pressure system, you have the surface based low pressure system situated just off the coast of California here. Can make out the state of California here on satellite imagery. They've thankfully outlined the state there in that blue color there. But it's a picturesque storm here this morning, filming the video a little bit earlier than I usually do with the holiday schedule. Kind of your classic kind of cut-off low. We get these this time of the year in California, not necessarily the most potent winter storm that we get, certainly on the West Coast, but enough to bring some rainfall, some flooding concerns, flood advisories, flood watches that have been issued along the coastline. And then just looking down at the visible satellite imagery, we can see this plume of rainfall, the clouds associated with that coming into the central coastline right now. Rain falling just recently here in the Bay Area. I think some of that's still getting to the ground. And then heavier rain here kind of all along the south central coast. That's kind of the bullseye for some of the stronger rainfalls, the flood watches, and the concern for this event here. Now, looking down on this, if you look well to the east, we even have some rain showers kind of associated with another and a separate flux of moisture coming up into Arizona there. But the storm system as a whole is going to be kind of inching and sneaking its way further toward the south through the day today, kind of stalling there overnight tonight, and then into tomorrow, kind of making its way finally Thursday night into Friday morning back up where it's going to make landfall somewhere here kind of nebulously in Southern California. So that's kind of the big picture of what we're watching with the storm. Kind of the immediate concern is just rainfall. A lot of that falling here in parts of coastal California, some of this trying to sneak into the Central Valley. I think we will see some more showers try to push into the Central Valley. Not anything, I think, too significant. Some of the model runs maybe last week were showing more rainfall getting in there, but I do expect some measurable amounts to be sneaking in to the east side of the coastal mountain range there. But you can see widespread rainfall essentially across the entire Central California coastline, and then even some rainfall now being reported kind of more in that Southern California coastline area. I think that's going to increase as we go through the day today here on Wednesday. If we look at the National Weather Service advisories that are active here, you can see the big swath of flood watches essentially active from San Diego up through kind of the Oxnard, Santa Maria area. Flood advisories north of that toward Monterey, and then a few in the Bay Area as well, with winter storm warnings out for the southern Sierra Nevada mountains, expected to get anywhere from 6 to 12 inches out of the system here. I do want to take you and kind of forecast these rainfall amounts going forward, because the system is kind of sneaking south and it's going to try to come on shore here as we get into Thursday. I'll take this forward here. You can see the rainfall this evening trying to push more into that south central kind of Southern California area. This is the area here we're expecting the highest totals of rainfall. That's where the highest flooding concerns are going to be. I talk about debris washouts, some urban flooding issues as well, with streams rising. So again, not the most potent winter storm, not expecting widespread flooding issues, but certainly enough to keep an eye on, and folks should stay aware in areas there along the south central coastline. I mean, getting in a little bit into the LA area. As we go overnight into Thursday morning, it's kind of a lull as we go through the early part of Thursday as the system again tries to sneak south, and then it's going to turn and try to come back toward the Southern California coastline here going into Thursday and then Friday morning. So I'll play it through Thursday night into Friday morning, and you can see by really early Friday morning some rainfall now overspreading the San Diego, Los Angeles area, all the way through Southern California, and then playing this forward, trying to get into the lower Colorado River Valley, Imperial County over to Yuma, further north up toward Blythe. And that is on Friday during the day, and then even pushing more over into central and southern Arizona as we go through the day Friday into Friday evening. Still some lingering rain across the Southern California area here into parts of the desert. This now through Friday evening. And then as I play this through, really kind of exiting the area all the way through California and Arizona, getting in to the day Saturday. Now, as I just played that through, another thing you might have noticed if I take this back just a few days here, expecting a quick shot of precipitation coming through the Pacific Northwest, coming out of the coastline here early Friday, expecting some rain to get into the Willamette Valley here, but not terribly too much, not falling as snow, except for up in the Cascades where they've had plenty of snow in the last few weeks, if not the last few months. So more of that coming from this quicker hitter here. Nothing too much to write home about. Could see some light precip getting into the Snake River Valley, but not too much expected, with some snow showers possible in the Golden Triangle. But again, not the most potent system here, just kind of a quick hitter, a quick dusting or quick amount of precipitation there across the northwestern U.S. If we look at rainfall totals just kind of out through that whole stretch here, we'll take this from the National Weather Service, the Weather Prediction Center, their forecast rain totals out through Monday of next week. You can see there's that bullseye we talked about in the south central coastline of California. That's where those flood watches have been issued. That's where the concerns are heightened for flooding risks and flooding concerns there. If you look into the Central Valley, not seeing too much additional rainfall here, anywhere from maybe a tenth to a quarter of an inch. Some of that rainfall trying to sneak inside the coast mountains there. Southern California could see higher rainfall amounts here, anywhere from a half inch to an inch, maybe over in some of these coastal mountainous regions here. Flood watches are extended all the way south through San Diego and the lower Colorado River Valley, at least from this National Weather Service forecast here, trying to sneak up into that inch territory of rainfall. Higher amounts here in central, southern, and southeastern Arizona as the system comes through on Friday. This area here is already getting rainfall here today, so those totals are included in that as well, but should see quite a bit of rainfall coming in addition as we go through Friday and then very early Saturday. That kind of covers the storm. You can see the quick hitter up to the northwest. Not expecting a ton of rain to get into the Willamette Valley here of Oregon, but some light precipitation. This is going to be falling as snow in the upper levels of the Cascades here as the storm makes its way inland. That kind of takes us through this weekend. I think the bigger story as we go out toward New Year's, through Christmas, into New Year's, really kind of out into next week here, is this Pacific Jet extension. We talked a lot about it in the video last week, that it would kind of be getting its act going here this week. Well, here it is Wednesday on the 20th, and there it is. There's this very strong Pacific Jet centered right over Japan here. You can see how quickly these winds are flowing at 250 millibars. This is miles up above our heads. And it's likely imparting some momentum here, perhaps playing a role in this cutoff low over California. But really, I think it's going to play a bigger role going through the week next week in terms of the precipitation forecast for the Northwest and California here. So we'll walk through that here and take a look at what we might be expecting going out into next week. This forecast valid here as of Wednesday evening. This is from the GFS, and you can see that potent Pacific Jet extension, very fast winds moving along the jet stream here in the Western Pacific. This is that cutoff low we just talked about here, bringing that rainfall to California, kind of well removed, if you will, from this Pacific Jet extension. But as I take this forecast through Thursday, then into Friday the 23rd, Christmas Eve, now toward Christmas, this is why we call it Pacific Jet extension. It's extending. It started at this forecast all the way over Japan, and now it's pushing all the way over now east of Hawaii, northeast of the islands there, and getting ever so closer toward the west coast of the United States. Now, initially, going out into next work week, even kind of, I should call it a work week, it's the holiday week here, but expecting more precipitation kind of in the British Columbia area as this kicks up a low pressure system here. That's not an uncommon evolution for these storm systems. So early in the week, not expecting a ton of precipitation to get in to the west coast, at least California proper, more so coming for parts of Canada, perhaps the Pacific Northwest here very early next week. But eventually, at some point next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, you can see this extension really stretching out all the way over, getting now into parts of Oregon, Washington, as that jet stream comes closer and closer to the west coast. Again, this is not an uncommon evolution for these extensions when we see that rainfall sometimes impact the northwest first, and then the jet stream comes further and further south, bringing the rainfall to Oregon and then California, and then perhaps all the way through Southern California sometime late next week. And you can kind of see that at the very beginning, kind of early next week, Christmas time, you had that jet kind of extending and ending here, terminating in British Columbia. Then we were looking at Washington, then Oregon, then parts of Northern California, now extending all the way through Southern California. So that might be the forecast getting on to the end of next week, where the rainfall kind of comes south through the western coastline here as this jet stream moves that way. And then I'm taking the forecast out even beyond that, even into all the way out into next Sunday. This is beyond 10 days, far too much to get any sort of specifics here. But I'm showing it because that extension, it's still there. It's lingering across the Pacific. Now, this might be premature, but if this were to stick around, we'd likely see additional rainfall chances all the way out into potentially New Year's, maybe even a few days after that. So nothing set in stone when you're looking at a forecast this far out, but likely a wetter pattern for California, getting out into the end of the next week, potentially even beyond that, kind of holding off on any sort of specific amounts or talking about a big storm or anything like that. And if we visualize that, this, we'll look at this product here. This is the ECMWF ensemble, called a 5-day rolling precipitation anomaly. So a departure for average for here at the end of December. You have to imagine now, this is a departure from average, and the end of December is kind of a wetter time here for the West Coast. So keep that in mind as I kind of roll this forward. But this is through Monday, really through Christmas Day. This is kind of that break we get as this low pressure system now exits toward the southeast. That's what all this activity here is, those green colors and those above average precipitation here. But kind of getting a break into the early part of next week as that extension kind of works its way across the Pacific. We just kind of walked through that forecast. But as I take this out into Wednesday and then Thursday, so now this is looking Sunday through Thursday precipitation anomalies. You can see it lighting up here in parts of British Columbia. It's trying to get into Washington now as we get out into Thursday and Friday. I'm expecting rain through Washington and Oregon next week, but this is a kind of a wet time of year, so it's not enough to kind of bump us above average for this kind of 5-day rolling window. That's why I said be mindful of the fact that it's a departure from average. It's not total precipitation. But really, you can see this now inching south into California, where we are expecting above normal precipitation chances getting out into the week next week and then through the weekend as well from the ECMWF ensemble. If I were to just take this and show you a 7-day total of precipitation rolling, and I take that through next work week, you can see rainfall all the way through the Pacific Northwest, rainfall through California as well. This is why I said be careful of those departures from average. Doesn't mean we're not going to be getting moisture and rainfall into parts of the Pacific Northwest here through the next work week. If we look at the Climate Prediction Center, this is their 6 to 10 day outlook, so covering Christmas kind of through the next few days there. They're seeing that same thing with the above average precipitation likely for parts of California, Oregon, and Washington. Warmer temperatures, as well as these low pressure systems, bring some warmer air up into the area here. And then if we just look out into the 8 to 14 day outlook for precipitation, this taking us through the 27th all the way through New Year's, January 2nd. Pretty similar story. If that jet extension is going to linger in the Pacific like we saw, at least from the GFS forecast, I would expect those precipitation chances to linger through that time period as well. The similar story on temperatures being a little bit warmer than not, again, relative to January 1st. So it doesn't mean we're necessarily getting the warmest temperatures you've ever had, breaking out the swimsuits or anything like that. So this kind of weather pattern, we're expecting that to continue here out into next week. A little bit of a break here going through the weekend as this kind of cutoff low exits the area. But that extension, it's coming for the area and does kind of pose the chances for some of these bigger storms to come through, where we might be talking about wind advisories or flood watches or flood warnings with some of these systems that come in. And then we'll also be looking at mountain snowfall as well when the details get a little bit clearer out into the next work week. Don't want to look at anything too specific when we're talking about a 7, 8, 9, 10 day forecast here. One thing I mentioned in the last video, we're kind of watching the signal in some of the long-range models of potentially a colder snap in January after we get some of the specific jet extension activity through the area, kind of out through the January 1st and January 2nd. This is looking at the extended forecast from the ECMWF. Again, this is a 30-day forecast all the way out through the month of January for temperature anomalies, and you can see a kind of a big bullseye for low temperatures expected here across the western U.S. This heightens the concern a little bit for some colder temperatures, potentially some deep freezes through perhaps California. See some of these colder anomalies getting all the way through the lower Colorado River Valley. This is something we'll be keeping an eye on. Can't take these long-range forecasts, verbatim. They're certainly far from perfect, but they do pick up on some signals here early enough to at least heighten our concern. So we'll be watching for this as we kind of get out in January, that first week after this weather pattern passes, and potentially into the second week as well, if the ECMWF might be onto something here. The last thing I wanted to touch on was El Nino. I mentioned, I think earlier this month in December, that El Nino may have peaked at the end of November. Now that doesn't matter terribly too much for the forecast because we're likely going to stay in an El Nino long enough through the winter here that it's going to affect our water year with more precipitation expected for parts of California, Arizona, kind of seeing that even in just kind of that 7 to 14 day forecast, right? But it may not have peaked. And I say that because what I'm showing you now are the trade wind anomalies across the Pacific. These trade winds tend to govern how quickly El Nino might strengthen or weaken. And this is going back in time here, up back toward November. Here's the present day, December 20th. As you go down in the graph, this is looking out kind of toward January. And these colors here represent strengths or weaknesses in the trade winds. And really what we're looking at here, the red color shows a weakness in the trade winds over the Pacific, expected to kind of start right now here, December 20th, and then linger as we go out into that 10 to 14 day forecast. Weak trade winds over the Central Pacific tends to strengthen El Nino. In fact, when we kind of had that maybe peak of El Nino, it was way back at the end of November when you had these weak trade winds right over the Central Pacific here, kind of co-located with where we're expecting another weakness here going out into the forecast through Christmas and toward New Year's. What this tells me is we might still have yet to peaked in that El Nino index here. Again, not terribly too much important whether we peak here in December versus late November, but at least this tells you right now it's not fading anytime soon. If anything, El Nino is going to be strengthening going through the new year. So not seeing a huge weakness in El Nino, something like suddenly we're falling off the charts in January or February. Be keeping an eye on that going forward. That's all I have for you all today here. I will talk to you again after the holiday weekend, and stay safe and enjoy it. Thanks for watching.